family. How y'all doing? I'm your brother, Mtima Radi. Peace to you, peace to your home, peace to your family, peace to your community, peace to your ancestry, peace to my community, peace to my ancestry, and peace to the nation that you, I, they are creating. Peace also to the Godic forces, Great Spirit above, Mother below, to the four elements, the four elemental rays, as they're called. Black, water. Red, earth. Yellow, wind. White, fire. To the Great Spirit above, the Mother below. Mtima Radi, everybody. Interestingly, I was doing a little exercising, and I was listening to a video that I posted on Friday, December 11th. You may have watched it, you may have not. Beyond the Church as Imperium. Spiritual Game Unveiled. That was the video. And the revelation hit me like a ton of bricks. The ancestors answered for me a question that I'd been asking for quite some time. Why did the Moors go into Europe? Obviously, we know the answer. But those answers aren't good enough for me. I wanted to know from a comedic standpoint, why would they risk the well-being of the planet on such a young people? And the ancestor said to me, there was hope that they would mature. There's often a saying about the White House that those who obtain the presidency become influenced by the pressures of the office. They were hoping the same thing happened to Europeans. But with that out the way, they proceeded to tell me something which was, I think, more important. In fact, I know so. Years ago, on one of my first videos that I posted, I spoke about a problem that occurred with the Kemetic mystery school system. That the idea behind the mystery school system was that they were supposed to educate not only the wealthy, not only the elite, but everybody. Their divine, if you want to call it divine, ancestral mission was to take the wisdom and knowledge that they had in those temples and to treat each individual soul and spirit, had to separate them, on the planet, particularly in Egypt, Kemet, as initiates, to push them through the process of becoming an initiate. Now, in the primordial times, before history was written down, they understood that the human brain would develop rapidly, that lifespans would expand drastically, and that what was once considered old, 40, would be considered middle-aged. They also understood that with the mind growing, the quickness of the body to be able to hold information, because this holds information, everything holds information, would also increase, which would result in people being able to literally recall information very quickly and be able to access intuition on a level that the last time they were able to do that was in the higher realms. So they were supposed to develop a system, a way to methodically determine where each soul was in its progression. That's astrology and numerology. And then, based on that placement, the person, the child, I want to stress this to you. People would start being initiated when they were babies. They were 1 and 2 years old. Based on where they were at in their spiritual and celestial development, they would go through the process of being initiated. They would be put in certain classes around certain people with certain teachers, things like that. So that by the time they were 20, they would have the wisdom of a 40 to 45-year-old. Many of us wonder, how did Beethoven become Beethoven? How did Chopin become Chopin? How did all of these great people in Europe suddenly develop immense mentalities so rapidly? It is because part of the system that was used in Kemet, that was developed in Kemet for this purpose, which they didn't use for the masses, they used for the wealthy, was taken by the Moors into Europe and taught to the elite. It was supposed to, the Moors knew, because among the Moors were old Kemetic priests, such teachings were supposed to be the beginnings of the education of the masses. They were supposed to do that. That's why the first public schools were created by the Moors. The first public colleges were created by the Moors. The Moors weren't just teaching these people how to read. They were literally teaching them how to think better, how to coexist better, how to advance quicker, and how to bring their societies forward rapidly. This is why they concentrated on teaching them Greek, Latin, Arabic, and preserving their own languages by where there was no script, helping to develop one. Where there was no dialectical record, helping to develop one. They were committed to this because it would benefit humanity. These schools, by the time the year 2000, not 2000, I'm sorry, what we call the year zero, the year zero, by the time that year came up, humanity would have been in a place, the Kemetics knew, where their minds could hold at 20 what a 30 to 35-year-old could hold. At least so they thought. It didn't turn out to be the case. But by the time the Renaissance, period, right before the Renaissance kicked off, mankind was ready for it. Or at least should I say, man and mankind was ready for it. See, because they already knew in Africa that the minds of the people were so advanced, particularly in North Africa and some parts of Central Africa, that when they went in, they would be able to teach 10-year-olds and 15-year-olds what they were teaching 35 and 40-year-olds. They went into the places where it would take them longer to catch up to this level. This also was the case for Yahushua. Yahushua was supposed to start his ministry in Kemet, move up into what was then called Persia, and then down into India, and possibly over into China, unifying those peoples who were once unified. But he was caught before he could do that. This is important because if you want to understand why Europeans have been so gung-ho on keeping you from learning, keeping your mind from developing, your mind from expanding, your mind from growing, it is because whether it is admitted at the top of the society or it is just held as truth in their subconscious. They know where the planet is supposed to be. They know what you are supposed to be. They know where your mind's supposed to be. And they feel threatened by it. Absolutely threatened by it. Give me one moment, family. Give me one moment. Alright, so I'm back. I was wondering if there was a connection between what I just told you and today. And the ancestors say to me that there is, though it cannot be explained very thoroughly right now. All that I can say is I can reiterate what I've said before about some of the raids on black communities were not done just to hate black people. They were purposeful. Sometimes they went looking for stuff, and sometimes they mistakenly found stuff. But yeah, that's really all I can say about that right now. What I will say also, what I will say also is this thing about extraterrestrials. The ancestors, said something to me very interesting about extraterrestrials. First and foremost, when you think about Earth or Arth, you have to think of it as a complex of dimensions which interlock with one another. Earth is at a midpoint in a lot of these interlocking dimensions. Now, the dimensions themselves don't make Earth. Earth makes itself. But there's still a bunch of dimensions here, and many of which belong to what one might say is a network, feeding and drawing off of Earth. There are many what we would think of as globes that are independent from Earth, but are still part of the same system, while there are other dimensions that the best way for me to describe them is to say, back in the day, back in the 80s, there used to be these cartoons where there would people would be on solid ground, and in the background you would see and actually this was done in Avatar too, where you'd see these floating land masses. And by the way, how those floating land masses were made possible, because I wondered this, by the way, because I was like, that just seems impossible. is magnetic stabilities and rips in the magnetic field, which literally allowed the planet to collect dust in one area and to literally make a place where dust gathers, settles into a dirt clump, and then obviously seeds and stuff grow on it. It's rare that those magnetic disturbances are for very small locations. So on very big planets, usually bigger than Earth, you would have literally thousands of miles of dirt collecting in the sky. And then it would be a new place and people could go up there and live and stuff. Anyway, when it comes to extraterrestrials and intraterrestrials, we have to understand that when we talk about extraterrestrials, we are literally talking about entities typically that are from outside of this Earth network. Where we don't talk a lot about intraterrestrials. And the reason we don't talk about intraterrestrials is because let's just say there's some conflict there. I have to be careful as I'm walking around this one. But let's just say there's a little conflict there. So we don't talk a lot about intraterrestrials. Now it's funny because, I have a book. If you had asked me about intraterrestrials, a few, a couple years back, I would have laughed you out of my apartment. I really would have. And I think I've made that statement before. But I really believe there's something to it. Now, I really do. And I actually have a couple books on it now. And there's some conflict between, what we call surface dwellers and the intraterrestrials. So, hopefully I'll change, but, they would much prefer, I guess, to deal with extra than the intra. That stated, most of your, just about all of your Kemetic orders are intraterrestrial orders that then expand externally. So, those globes that I mentioned, and those dimensions that I mentioned, they are very important because they hold life forms which are connected to this planet. There are larger other dimensional globes that feed this planet, and this planet gives, to it also, that houses, if I could use that phrase, hundreds of millions of species that no longer roam this planet of animals. And there's a lot of us there. There is a lot of us there. A lot of the people who are here today who love animals, who love taking care of them and what have you, they live a very, 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 very simplistic life, taking care of and watching over animals there. There's also globes, a couple of other globes that mirror this world, but significantly different. How? Different countries, slightly different landmass structures, things like that. If we could handle it, those walls would come down and we'd be able to travel. If I remember correctly, there's 3 of them. We'd be able to travel to those 3 places. But we couldn't handle that. We could not handle that. And then there are dimensions that are dedicated specifically to various cultures, and those dimensions tend to lead from the highest most globe, which, kind of feeds us all. But yeah, that's a fantastic place. I've had the opportunity to be there. It's wow. Speaking of that, years ago, I asked about the new heaven and new earth, and I was blessed to be able to go with the ancestors to the new earth. The new earth, which is on the other side of this galaxy, I believe. Larger than this planet, significantly so. A few different moons also surround it. But it's gorgeous. Absolutely beautiful. I miss it. Absolutely gorgeous. Many more different tribes will be there. Many more different peoples will be there. It's quite wonderful. I'm not sure if they've started populating it yet. Anyway, it went off on that, I suppose. But we all do need to be getting in touch with this information because it should be coming through a lot more of you guys right now. On that, I'm calling it a night. Question, comments, concerns, leave it below. I will talk to you guys on the next one. Peace.